Lara Miles stood by the window of observation post Theta 6, staring out at the golden fields of Nexra Prime. From here, the planet looked peaceful. The sky was a soft shade of violet. The wind moved gently over the tall grass. Farmers in light suits worked under the twin suns, moving slowly as if they had all the time in the universe. But Lara knew better. Peace was never permanent. It was a fragile thing, easily broken. She had arrived only 3 days ago. The Galactic Union had sent her to monitor the ongoing research missions on Nexra Prime. Her title was Exocultural Researcher, but everyone knew what that really meant. She was here to make sure no one crossed the line. The Union had declared Nexra a protected planet decades ago. No military, no political moves, no resource claims. Observation only. Lara had always believed in the Union's mission. She had spent years traveling from world to world, studying fragile cultures and helping keep the peace. She followed the rules. She respected the agreements. She trusted the system. But something felt wrong here. Lara had noticed it on her first night. The observation reports from the other posts were delayed. The Union's communication link had strange gaps in the data stream. Satellites that had stayed in the same orbit for years had started shifting position. None of these things seemed big on their own, but together they made her uneasy. She had mentioned it to Director Delos, the head of Theta 6. He was a quiet man, older than most of the staff. He had nodded, but told her not to worry. Nexra is stable, he had said. Nothing happens here. But Lara couldn't let it go. Today, she had decided to check things herself. She left the observation tower and crossed the open walkway to the data center. The building hummed softly with power. Inside, rows of screens showed live feeds from drones and satellites. Technicians worked quietly at their stations. Lara walked to the main console and brought up the satellite logs. She searched the records from the last week. As she expected, there were gaps, longer than usual. She checked the relay nodes. The signal strength had dropped several times, just long enough to block real-time observation. She frowned. Someone was interfering, or something was going on that no one wanted to admit. She saved the logs to her personal data chip. She needed more. She needed to see what the other posts were seeing. Lara requested clearance to visit Post Gamma 4, located near the Eastern Valley. The director approved without question. It was part of her job, after all. She left Theta 6 by land cruiser, driving through open plains and rocky hills. The ride took several hours. Nexra's beauty was quiet and endless. Rolling land, shimmering plants, and distant mountains that touched the sky. When she arrived at Gamma 4, she was greeted by Dr. Elin Kaur, the post's lead scientist. Elin was younger than Lara expected, with short dark hair and sharp eyes. She smiled politely, but seemed guarded. Lara got straight to the point. "I need your observation logs from the last week," she said. Elin's smile faded a little. "Why?" Lara explained what she had noticed. The gaps, the satellite shifts, the delayed data. Elin didn't answer right away. She glanced around, then nodded for Lara to follow her into a side room. Once the door closed, Elin leaned in and whispered, "We noticed it too, but the Union hasn't said anything. We sent a report, but it disappeared from the system 2 days later." Lara's stomach tightened. "You think someone is covering it up?" Elin nodded slowly. "Or preparing for something." Lara asked to see the raw data. Elin agreed, but warned her to be careful. "If someone's hiding this," she said, "they're already watching us." Lara spent the next several hours digging through Gamma 4's records. The data showed the same pattern. Delays, shifts, brief sensor blackouts. But something else stood out this time. One of the satellites had picked up a faint energy signature just outside Nexra's orbital boundary. It was too faint to identify, but it matched the pattern of a fleet entering stealth approach. Lara's breath caught in her throat. No ships were allowed here. The Union's law was clear. She copied the data to her chip and prepared to leave. Elin stopped her at the door. "What are you going to do?" "Find out the truth," Lara said, "and stop whatever's coming before it's too late." Lara drove back to Theta 6 as night fell over the planet. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky glowing in shades of deep blue and purple. The stars began to appear, small and distant lights against the dark. Lara looked up, wondering who was already out there, who was already breaking the Union's promise. She didn't have long to wait. The fleet would arrive sooner than she feared. Morning came fast on Nexra Prime. Its twin suns rose early and bathed the land in pale gold. But this morning felt heavier, colder, as if the air itself knew something was about to go wrong. Lara had barely slept. She had spent most of the night reviewing the copied data again and again. There was no doubt. A fleet had approached Nexra's orbit under stealth cover. It could only mean one thing. Someone was planning to break the treaty. Someone was planning to interfere. Lara stood in the control room of Theta 6, staring at the satellite feed. The technicians around her worked as usual, unaware of what she had learned. She reached for the secure channel to the Galactic Union. Her voice stayed calm, but her heart raced as she made the call. "This is Lara Miles, exocultural researcher on Nexra Prime," she said. "I have confirmed signs of unauthorized fleet movement near this planet. Request immediate confirmation and guidance." The channel stayed quiet for longer than it should have. Then a short reply came through. "Report acknowledged. Stand by for Union response." The message ended. No details, no orders, just silence. Lara waited. Minutes turned into an hour. She paced the floor. The technicians gave her curious glances, but said nothing. Another hour passed, and still no response. Something was wrong. The Union never took this long to answer, especially not for something this serious. Lara was about to call again when the main alert alarm sounded across the station. Everyone stopped. Every screen in the control room flashed red. A warning message appeared across the top of the display. "Large unidentified fleet entering planetary orbit." Lara rushed to the console. The technician on duty pulled up the visual feed. Dozens of ships appeared on the screen. Long, dark shapes, armed cruisers, carriers, heavy support vessels, all marked with the blue and silver crest of Earth's Defense Command. The technicians gasped. Some whispered to each other in shock. Lara's throat tightened. She knew those ships. Everyone in the Union did. Earth's War Fleet, the largest military force in human space. A fleet that had no right to be here. The fleet moved slowly into position above Nexra. A communication request came through. The technician hesitated, looking to Director Delos. The director stood frozen for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Put it through," Lara said. The large screen changed to show a man in a dark gray uniform. His face was sharp and cold. His hair was steel gray. His eyes were hard and focused. Admiral Trent Voss. Lara recognized him instantly. She had read about him. A strict, ruthless leader, known for winning wars, not for making peace. Voss spoke in a steady, emotionless voice. "This is Admiral Trent Voss of Earth's Defense Command. We have entered Nexra Prime's orbit under the authority of Earth's High Council. We are here to protect Earth's interests in this sector and ensure the safety of all human operations on this planet. Our presence is peaceful. We expect full cooperation." The screen went dark. No warning. No explanation. Just a cold, direct statement. Earth had arrived. They had made their move. The room stayed silent for a long moment. Then Director Delos spoke softly. "Send a request to the Union again. Urgent priorité." Lara grabbed the console. They already know. They didn't answer the first time. They won't answer now. The director turned to her, confused. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the Union is letting this happen," Lara said, her voice sharp. "Or they're too afraid to stop it." The director looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. He sat down heavily in his chair, rubbing his forehead. Lara didn't wait for permission. She rushed out of the control room and made her way to the vehicle bay. She needed to get to the surface. She needed to warn the people who lived here. She drove fast toward the central settlement of Karen's Field, where most of the farmers and scientists lived. As she neared the village, she saw them already gathered outside, looking up at the sky. The fleet was visible now, dark shapes moving slowly in the atmosphere. Giant shadows blocking the light of the suns. Lara stopped the vehicle and climbed onto a supply crate to speak. "Everyone listen," she called out. "Earth's fleet is here. They claim they are here to protect us, but they have no right to be here." The Union is silent. You need to stay calm, but you also need to be ready. Something is happening that we were never warned about. A few people asked questions. Some looked afraid. Others looked angry. What are they really after? Someone shouted. Lara didn't have an answer. Not yet. Just then, a deep hum filled the air. Dropships, large and heavy, began descending toward the surface. Armed soldiers in black armor stepped out. They moved quickly, setting up patrol points near the mining zones just beyond the settlement. Lara clenched her fists. She knew this wasn't peace. This was occupation. She watched as the soldiers spread out. No one tried to stop them. The people of Nexareth stood frozen, unsure if they should fight, hide, or obey. Lara turned back toward her vehicle. She had to get to the Eastern Valley. She had to speak to Dr. Elancor again. If anyone knew the real reason for Earth's sudden arrival, it was her. She drove fast, dust rising behind her. The sky above darkened as the fleet settled into full control of Nexareth's orbit. Lara knew time was running out, and she knew the worst was yet to come. Lara reached the Eastern Valley by midday. The land here stretched wide and low, dotted with rocky hills and tall grass swaying in the wind. From a distance, the structures of Gamma stood like metal bones on the flat land. Lara pulled the vehicle to a stop near the landing platform. Armed soldiers were already stationed at the perimeter, standing still in black armor. Their rifles rested across their chests, ready but not raised. The Earth Defense Command crest stood bright on their shoulders. They didn't move to stop her, but their eyes followed her every step. Inside the station, she found Dr. Elancor waiting for her in the entrance hall. Elan looked more tense than before. She didn't speak until they were behind closed doors in the data archive room. I knew you'd come back, Elan whispered. They're already landing troops, Lara replied, her voice tight. Voss says they're here to protect Earth's interests. What's really going on? Elan walked to a secure storage cabinet and unlocked it. She pulled out a small data cube and held it tightly in her hand. Her eyes were sharp, but Lara saw fear hiding behind them. There's something you need to see, Elan said. She placed the cube into the reader. The screen came alive with scans, maps, and energy readings. Elan pointed to a deep scan of Nexareth's crust, taken only days ago. There's a helium-7 reserve buried beneath the eastern mining zone, Elan explained. The largest we've ever recorded. Enough to fuel Earth's core cities for decades. Lara stared at the data. She knew helium-7 was rare and powerful, used for starship fuel, planetary shields, and energy cores. Earth had struggled for years to secure enough of it. Other worlds guarded their supplies tightly. This find was more than just valuable. It was life-changing for Earth's power structure. This is why they're here, Lara whispered. Elan nodded. They found out through one of the mining scanners. I don't know how. The data was locked, but somehow they got it. Lara's mind raced. The peaceful excuse Voss gave, the protection mission, it was all a lie. Earth didn't care about protecting Nexara. They had come to claim the helium-7. They had come to strip the planet while the Union looked the other way. They can't do this, Lara said, stepping back from the console. The treaty forbids it. Elan lowered her voice. The Union isn't stopping them. You've seen it yourself. They've gone quiet. They won't act. Lara felt anger building in her chest. She had followed the rules her whole life. She had trusted the system. But now, the system was failing. Nexara was being handed over without a fight. She clenched her fists. I need to speak to Voss. Face to face. Elan's eyes widened. You'll never get close. He's surrounded by soldiers. Lara shook her head. He already made contact once. He'll answer again. She left Gamma-4 and drove back to Theta-6, sending a direct communication request to the flagship in orbit. She didn't know if Voss would respond, but she had to try. She didn't have to wait long. A reply came through less than an hour later. Voss's face appeared on the screen, as cold and unreadable as before. Miss Miles, he said calmly. I expected you'd reach out again. You've been busy. Lara kept her voice steady. I want to meet. In person. You owe Nexara that much. There was a pause. Then Voss nodded slightly. Very well. Tomorrow morning. Karen's Field, near the East Transport Station. Come alone. The screen went dark. Lara leaned back in her chair, feeling the weight of the risk she had just taken. But she knew it was the only way to get answers. Real answers, not more lies over a comm link. The next morning, Lara arrived at the meeting point. Voss was already there, standing with 2 guards beside an armored transport. He waved the guards back as she approached, signaling that this would be private. The 2 stood face to face under the bright Nexaran sun. Lara didn't waste time. You lied to everyone. You came here to steal Helium-7. Voss's lips twitched into something close to a smile, but it held no warmth. I didn't lie. I told you we're here to protect Earth's interests. That's exactly what we're doing. There's a treaty, Lara snapped. You're breaking it. The treaty is nothing more than words, Voss replied. Words that have kept Earth choking on scraps, while other worlds grow fat on resources we discovered first. Nexara's Helium-7 belongs to us. It was human technology that found it. Human sacrifice that built the scanners. Earth needs this. I intend to secure it. Lara shook her head. By force. If needed, Voss said, without hesitation. But I'd rather avoid bloodshed. Which is why I'm offering you a choice. Lara narrowed her eyes. What choice? Stand aside, Voss said. Tell your people to cooperate. Let the fleet secure the mining site without resistance. No one has to get hurt. Lara felt her stomach twist. He spoke as if it was reasonable, as if giving up the planet's future was the smart thing to do. She took a deep breath and met his cold gaze. No, she said firmly. I won't stand aside, and I won't let you take this planet without a fight. Voss studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, as if her answer had already been expected. So be it, he said quietly. He turned and walked back to the transport, leaving Lara standing alone on the cracked ground. The engines roared as the vehicle lifted into the sky, carrying Voss back to his fleet. Lara knew what would come next. Voss would begin moving his soldiers to the mining site. He would tighten his grip on Nexara, and she knew she couldn't wait for the Union any longer. If she wanted to stop this, she would have to fight back on her own. Lara returned to Theta 6, her mind set on the risk ahead. She gathered her data, prepared her message, and sent a call to every settlement on the planet. It was time to reveal the truth to the entire galaxy. It was time to resist. Lara didn't sleep that night. The station was quiet, but her mind was not. She knew time was running out. Voss had shown his hand. His fleet was in place. His soldiers were moving. If she waited any longer, Nexara would be lost. She sat in the control room, staring at the empty comm lines. The Union still hadn't answered. She had tried again after her meeting with Voss, but the result was the same, silence. It was clear now. They weren't going to stop him. Either they were afraid, or they had already decided Nexara wasn't worth the risk. Lara stood and faced the technicians in the room. She didn't hide the urgency in her voice. Clear the floor. I need the room. The technicians hesitated, looking at Director Delos. The director studied Lara for a long moment, then nodded. Do as she says. When they were gone, Lara locked the doors and activated the station's private broadcast system. It wasn't much, but it was linked to every observation post and settlement on Nexara. If she was going to fight back, she needed everyone to hear the truth. And she needed the galaxy to hear it too. She took a deep breath and started recording. This is Lara Miles, exocultural researcher for the Galactic Union, speaking from observation post Theta 6 on Nexara Prime. I'm sending this message to every settlement on this planet and to anyone in the Union who can still hear me. Earth's war fleet has entered Nexara's orbit. They claim they are here to protect peace. But that is a lie. They have come to take the Helium-7 buried beneath this planet. They plan to take it by force. The Union knows and has done nothing to stop them. I have seen the proof. I have spoken to Admiral Voss. He made it clear he intends to claim Nexara for Earth's own gain. But we are still here. The people of Nexara are still here. And we do not consent. This planet is not a prize to be stolen. To the people of Nexara, I ask you to stand together. Do not give in to fear. Do not let them take what is not theirs. To the Union, I ask you to remember your promise. You swore to protect this world. Do not turn away now. We are not powerless. We are not alone. But if we do not act now, Nexara will fall. This is our line. We hold it together. Lara ended the recording and set it to broadcast across all Union channels. She didn't know if it would reach beyond the system, but she had to try. She leaned back in her chair, feeling the weight of what she had just done. There was no turning back now. Voss would see this as open resistance. A soft knock came at the door. Director Delos stepped in quietly, looking at her with tired eyes. "You just started a war," he said softly. Lara stood to face him. "No." Voss started at the moment he crossed that treaty line. "I'm just refusing to let him win without a fight." The director nodded slowly. "What's the plan now?" Lara pulled up the station's surface map. "We hit their communications." The director frowned. "That's suicide." "Maybe," Lara replied. "But if we cut them off from Earth Command, we buy ourselves time." Without orders, Voss might hesitate. And if the Union finally wakes up, they'll need evidence that Nexra resisted. The director didn't argue. He simply nodded again. "I'll gather the others." By morning, a small team of technicians, scientists, and local farmers stood ready in the vehicle bay. They weren't soldiers, but they were all Lara had. She explained the plan in simple words. "There's a relay station in the Western Hills," she told them. "Voss's fleet uses it to send signals to Earth. If we take it offline, they'll be cut off." One of the farmers, a tall woman named May, spoke up. "What about the guards?" Lara looked each of them in the eye. "We avoid them if we can. We don't fight unless we have to. This isn't about winning a battle. It's about buying time." They loaded up 2 transport vehicles and set out under the cover of early morning fog. The roads were empty. Voss's patrols were focused on the mining site. That gave him a narrow window to move. The relay station stood on a rocky ridge, guarded by a small team of soldiers. Lara and her group stopped just out of sight. She studied the station carefully. "We split up," she said. "One group creates a distraction. The other goes for the relay." May nodded and took a group toward the far side of the ridge. Lara led the second group toward the relay. The distraction worked. The guards moved to investigate the noise. Lara and her team slipped inside the control room. The air smelled of metal and machine oil. Red lights blinked on the control panel. Lara placed a small charge on the main console. It wasn't powerful enough to destroy the station, but it would fry the systems long enough to stop communications. She looked around one last time. Everyone out. They cleared the building and took cover behind the rocks. Lara pressed the trigger. The explosion was small, but it did the job. The relay went dark. The signal died. Lara knew they couldn't stay. Voss's soldiers would come fast. They raced back to the vehicles and drove hard toward Karen's field. By the time they returned, the settlement was already buzzing with energy. People had heard Lara's broadcast. Some looked scared. Others looked ready. Lara stood on the central platform and raised her voice again. "We've made our stand," she said. "We've sent our message. Now we hold this ground. We protect Nexra together." The people cheered, not loudly, but with quiet determination. Lara looked to the sky. She knew Voss would strike next. She knew the real fight was coming. But she also knew this time they wouldn't face it alone. The people of Nexra didn't sleep that night. Neither did Lara. She stood in the center of Karen's field, watching as farmers, scientists, and settlers gathered whatever they could use to build a defense. They had no real weapons, just work tools, old mining equipment, and a few energy shields powered by portable cores. But they had something Voss's soldiers didn't have: fearless determination to protect their home. Lara knew it wasn't much, but it was all they had. She helped organize lookout points at the edge of the settlement. Others worked to set up barriers made from old supply crates, metal panels, and farm machinery. No one spoke of victory. They all knew they couldn't win a real battle against Earth's trained soldiers. But they could make Voss think twice. By dawn, the settlement looked more like a fortress than a farm. People stood at their posts, ready for what was coming. Lara stood with May, who now carried a long metal rod wired with a small charge pack. More a tool than a weapon, but it would have to do. "They'll be here soon," May said quietly. Lara nodded. She checked the sky again. The fleet was still there, dark shapes hanging above like silent predators. They didn't have to wait long. Just before midday, the ground began to tremble. Dropships approached from the east, kicking up dust and wind as they landed beyond the hills. Dozens of soldiers marched toward Karen's field, black armor shining in the sun. At the front of the formation walked Admiral Trent Voss. Lara stepped forward from the line of settlers and walked alone toward the approaching soldiers. She raised her hands to show she carried no weapon. Voss signaled his soldiers to hold position. He stepped ahead alone to meet her. They stood face to face again, just as they had before. But this time, Voss looked less patient. "You had your chance," Voss said coldly. "You should have stood aside." Lara kept her voice steady. "You heard the broadcast. So did the Union. The whole galaxy knows what you've done. If you attack now, you'll expose Earth for what it really is, a thief breaking its own promises." Voss gave a small smile, but his eyes stayed hard. "You really think the Union will come for you? They had their chance. They stayed silent. They won't risk war over this planet." Lara took a step closer. "Maybe you're right, but I'm standing here anyway. So are they." She turned slightly, motioning to the line of settlers behind her. Farmers, scientists, traders, none of them soldiers, but all of them standing together. Voss glanced past her, studying the thin line of defenders. For a moment, the air felt thick with silence. Then he spoke again, softer this time. "You know, I could end this right now. I have the firepower. You have nothing." Lara met his gaze without flinching. "Then do it. Show the galaxy what Earth's courage really looks like." Voss didn't move. He just stood there, staring at her as if measuring something unseen. The standoff stretched on. The people behind Lara held their breath. Then, from the sky, bright streaks of light cut through the clouds. A new fleet dropped from orbit, smaller than Earth's, but marked with the white and gold symbol of the Galactic Union. Union peacekeeping ships. Voss turned his head slightly to watch the ships descend. His jaw tightened. His hand curled into a fist at his side. "They answered," Lara whispered. Voss let out a slow breath. He looked back at Lara, his face unreadable. "You've made a mistake today," he said softly. Lara didn't reply. She didn't need to. Voss turned to his soldiers and raised his hand. Without a word, they began to pull back. The dropships fired up their engines, ready to lift off again. The people of Nexera watched in silence as Earth's forces retreated toward their transports. Voss paused one last time, looking over his shoulder at Lara. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Earth doesn't forget." Lara stood tall. "Neither do we." Voss boarded the final dropship. The engines roared as the ships lifted into the sky, rising toward the waiting fleet. One by one, the ships turned and began to leave Nexera's orbit. The Union peacekeepers landed moments later. Armed but calm, they spread out through the settlement, offering protection, not control. Lara felt the weight lift from her shoulders. Nexera had held the line, but she knew this was only the beginning. The ground still trembled after the war fleet left. The air smelled of burned fuel. The wind carried the last echoes of engine noise across the empty hills. But Nexera still stood. Lara watched the Union peacekeepers move through Karen's field. Their white and gold armor shined brightly under the morning suns. Their ships were smaller, fewer, but they carried the weight of the Union's law. For the first time in days, the people of Nexera began to breathe again. But the danger had not fully passed. Lara knew what Voss had meant when he said, "This isn't over." She had seen it in his eyes, the cold promise that Earth would return one day, maybe stronger, maybe smarter. Voss had been forced to back down, but he had not lost his ambition. Nexera had won the moment, not the war. The peacekeepers set up temporary command posts in the settlement. Captain Rillen, the officer in charge, asked to speak with Lara privately. They met inside the observation station near the edge of the field. Rillen was younger than Lara expected, with a steady gaze and a calm voice. "You did something most people wouldn't dare," Rillen said. "You stood alone when the Union stayed silent." Lara leaned forward. "I didn't have a choice. Voss wasn't going to stop. And the Union waited too long." Rillen nodded slowly. "I agree. The Council was afraid of Earth's power. They argued for days while Voss moved in. Your broadcast forced their hand. The galaxy heard it. The Council couldn't stay quiet after that." Lara rubbed her hands together, trying to push away the chill she felt. Do they even care about Nexera? Or are they just protecting their own image? Rillen's face stayed unreadable. Maybe both. but you gave them no room to ignore it. You made them choose. Lara stood and looked out the window. The people of Karen's field were gathering again, this time without fear. They were already tearing down the makeshift barricades. Life was trying to return to normal, but Lara knew nothing would be the same again. What happens now, she asked. Rillen stepped closer. We'll hold Nexera for a time. Make sure Earth doesn't come back too soon. But the treaty is broken. You know that. There's no going back to the way things were. Lara nodded. She already knew the truth. The piece had cracks in it now, deep ones. Voss had tested the Union and nearly won. Others would try again. She turned to Rillen. Then tell the Council this. Nexera will stand on its own if it has to. We won't wait for someone else to decide our future. Rillen gave a slow, respectful nod. I'll deliver your words. Lara left the station and walked back to the heart of the settlement. People stopped to thank her. Some hugged her. Some simply nodded in quiet respect. She smiled softly, but the weight of what they had all been through stayed heavy on her shoulders. May found her near the old water tower. The farmer carried her patched-up tool again, but this time as a symbol, not a weapon. We made it, May said, her voice steady. For now, Lara replied. May crossed her arms and looked up at the sky. Do you really think they'll come back? Lara didn't answer right away. She followed May's gaze toward the empty space above. They will, she said quietly. One day, maybe not Voss, maybe someone worse. Earth won't stop needing helium-7. They'll find a way to justify it again. May nodded, as if she had already accepted it. Then what do we do? Lara placed a hand on May's shoulder. We prepare. We stay ready. And next time, we won't wait for anyone's permission to defend our home. May smiled faintly. You sound like a leader. Lara gave a small laugh. I sound like someone who's tired of being quiet. They stood there for a long moment, watching the sky. The people of Nexera moved around them, rebuilding, living. The planet had held its ground, but the future was still uncertain. Lara knew one thing for sure. This fight had changed her. She had come here to observe, to follow rules. But when the rules failed, she had learned what it really meant to stand for something. The line between peace and war was thinner than anyone liked to admit. And sometimes, standing on that line was the only way to keep it from breaking. 3 weeks had passed since the fleet had left. Nexera Prime had returned to its quiet life on the surface. The skies were clear again. The twin suns rose and set like they always had. The people had gone back to their work, tending the fields, running research stations, and repairing what little had been damaged during the standoff. But nothing really felt the same. Lara walked through Karen's field as she had done many times before. This time, though, people looked at her differently. Not like an outsider, not like a Union officer. They looked at her as one of their own. Some nodded as she passed. Some stopped her to share a few words. They didn't ask about the Union. They didn't ask about Earth. They asked about Nexera, about how they could protect their home from whatever might come next. Lara didn't have all the answers, but she listened. That was what mattered now. Listening, preparing, and making sure no one ever had to face something like this alone again. At the old communication tower, Lara checked the long-range equipment. The Union's peacekeepers were still stationed in orbit, though their ships stayed distant, silent observers like the satellites used to be. Captain Rillen had kept his promise. He and his team had held the line after Voss left. But even Rillen knew they wouldn't stay forever. The Union had made no new promises. The Council had sent a short message thanking Nexera for their patience. It sounded more like a political excuse than a real apology. Lara hadn't answered. She wasn't sure she ever would. She sat at the console and began writing her final report. It wasn't for the Union. It was for Nexera itself, for the people who had stood with her when the galaxy turned its back on them. Field report, Nexera Prime, final entry. Nexera Prime remains free, for now. Earth's fleet is gone. The Union's peacekeepers watch from a distance. But peace here is not guaranteed. The treaty has been broken. Trust has been broken. We stood alone when the Union stayed silent. We stood together when Earth tried to take what wasn't theirs. We have learned something important. No fleet, no government, no distant council can promise us safety. We must build it ourselves. We must defend it ourselves. Nexera will not forget. And when the next challenge comes, we will be ready. Lara saved the report and closed the console. She stood and walked outside into the sunlight. The air was fresh and warm. The wind carried the sound of laughter from the settlers as they repaired one of the transport vehicles nearby. She smiled softly. May approached her, holding a small data chip. The council sent another message. May said. Lara shook her head. Let them wait. May grinned. Good. They walked together toward the observation hill, the highest point overlooking Karen's field. From here, Lara could see the wide plains stretching far into the horizon. Nexra's beauty was unchanged. Its spirit had only grown stronger. This is your home now, isn't it? May asked. Lara took a deep breath and nodded. Yes. If they come back, I'll be here. They stood side by side in silence, watching the land they had both fought to protect. No more hiding, no more waiting. They had found their voice. And no matter who came next, Nexra would stand. Not because of the Union, not because of Earth, because of the people who lived here. Lara knew the line between peace and war would always be thin, but for the first time, she believed they could hold it. She looked to the sky one last time, not with fear, but with quiet determination.